Hey, what is going on, everybody? Bauer here. Welcome back to the channel, guys, and welcome to another video tutorial. All right, I guess we can kind of call this one a mini series. We're going to be working inside of Blender, and what I will be showing you in these few videos is how I'm going to be showing you my workflow, right? How I create deco houses for for my current map project, right? Now this can be done one of many ways. You can build something out of your head, something you find in a magazine. Now I've been using like Google Maps, Google Earth, right? Going down a street view and capturing the houses, screen capturing the houses that are in the area I'm currently working. But you can do this anywhere, right? So I've been building a small collection of houses that I plan on building in the future that will be used in my map project. All right. So we're going to be working off a real image. I will be showing you some of the tools, some of the add-ons that I use inside of Blender to get, to perform certain tasks when I'm building these houses. All right. I will show you how to do interiors. Now, with interiors, I don't mean walking into the house, being able to walk into the living room, that sort of thing. I will show you how to make it so you can see through the windows. You can see kind of a living room, dining room, kitchen, that sort of thing. Make the windows light up at night. We'll do that. I will show you how to do the LODs, how I do my occluder meshes. From there, we'll kick it over to Substance Painter. All right, we'll paint everything up really nice and then back into the map. And in between, there's going to be lots of different things I'm going to show you. So there's a lot to learn. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to head to Google, not Google Earth, but Google Maps, right? So we literally have the entire world to pick from, right? So you should be able to find at least one house somewhere in this area that you can build. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick a state at random. I'm going to kind of fart around a little bit, looking here, looking there at different houses, something older, something newer, doesn't matter. But I want you guys to do the same thing, right? So go into Google Maps, just kind of go down the street view. If you've never done this before, just pick an area. Right now, this is the area that I'm working here in Palmer, but get yourself down to a similar area. I'm not going to go in Palmer because I've literally built every house in that city or in that town. But I'm going to pick something from the surrounding areas because the houses, I'll tend to look not the same, but, more or less for that area. So this first one I came across really isn't so bad. I may be able to do something with this, actually. All right, so get yourself down there. Find a house that's going to work for you. Doesn't matter the location. Try to grab something that's got kind of a side view, like I have here, where you can see the side of the house and the front of the house. This way, we can get the depth and the width off of the house, right? So you need the whole image, a little bit of a side view, front view, and then from there, we can just go ahead and we can save this image. Now, I do have a bunch of images already saved that I plan on using either in my current project or future projects. Doesn't really matter. All right. Little box should have popped up there and it did not. There we go. All right. So I'm going to save this. I do have a folder that I can save these to. All right. So I'm going to save that there. And then I'm also going to save another one in Blender. Let's create a new folder called Tutorial Series. I can't spell today. All right, and then I'll save that one inside of there, and then this way we have something that we can work with. Okay, that's it for that part of it. That's the easy part. All right, so let's get ourselves over to Blender now. All right, open up Blender. Get yourself inside of a new project. Start something up so you see this basic square here, right? This is your default starting square. Now, from there, what I'm going to use is I'm going to use a program called Perspective Plotter. It's an add-on called Perspective Plotter. All right. Now, there's other programs that do similar things, and you may be able to get away with doing some of this without an add-on. But for those of you who are interested, I will put the link in somewhere in the description of this video for Perspective Plotter. It's not a free program, but it's not very expensive. So keep that in mind that this is not free. All right, so from here, you know what, like I said, we got our default starting cube. What I'm going to do is well, it's been a while since I did this. So let's see if I can remember. I am going to go into camera. Let's highlight camera. Okay. And then I'm going to go down here to the actual icon of the camera. And from there, we have a section here called background images. I'm going to click on add image and I'm going to go to open. All right. And then from there, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to look for the image that I had just downloaded. So that was Blender tutorial series and then screenshot. Okay. Now you'll notice that nothing changed. It didn't just pop up on the screen and instantly you have an image. All right. What you need to do is keep that camera selected and press 0, right, on your number pad. If you don't have a number pad, I'm not sure if your 0 on the top doesn't work. You can go into your file and preferences and you can change your key bindings for what number pad 0 does. But anyhow, that gives me into my camera view here, right? So I'm looking through the camera right now at this house. All right. And perspective plotter, if you haven't done so, like I said, what you want to do is you want to download it, go to whatever site. I'm going to link to, what do I use for mine? Blender Market is what I use for mine. So I'll link to Blender Market, download it from there. And once you get it downloaded, you can go to install, go look for the file wherever you downloaded it to. And then once it's installed, it should show up on this list. And then you just, check the box next to it, make sure it's active. And then it'll show up in your side panel here. N as in Nancy will make that side panel appear and disappear. All right. So once you have that installed, right, and you have it over here, this P plotter, right, you'll see towards the bottom here, it shows up in red where it says background unmatched. When I click on that, and that'll readjust the image so it looks a little bit more normal. All right. And from here, I go to my cube and I turn that transparent so I can see what I'm doing. You can hide the whole thing if you want temporarily, if that helps you out. Now on perspective plotter, I go up top here to plot perspective. All right. Now there's different ways that you can do this. What is the third perspective? Is that height? Yeah, I don't really use that. I use just the 2 perspectives. But I had been messing around with something in here. There's a reference distance, and I've been using along the z-axis, right? And I'll show you what I do with that. So let me get out of there for now. So what we're going to do is you see a set of green lines and red lines. Now that's our X and our Y axes, obviously. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for some really straight lines like along the top of the roof here. Oops. So I want to line this up maybe along the top of the roof. And what you're doing is you're establishing the vanishing point. If any of these guys have ever messed around with like drawing houses or any type of, I don't want to say architectural work, but sort of. Okay, so we'll line that up along the roof. And this next one, I'm going to pick another relatively straight line. It doesn't need to be exactly down bottom. Just find a line that you know is straight across the house. So I'm going to go with that line right there. Now I could pick something different. Perhaps I could always like maybe align it along the bottom of that porch. I just try to go for a longer line if I can find one. This way I know it matches a little bit better because it's really easy to be off. Like see when I zoom in here, that's definitely off. Now you can shorten this up if you need to. This is just establishing vanishing points. Now, if you're square, now it says invalid configuration. I might have done this wrong. The Y might be on the side of the house. I do that all the time. I get it wrong in the first shot. Let's turn on the cube. Now you're going to do the same thing with the X, and this might be wrong. Nah, it looks like it's falling into place. Okay, get ourselves in there a little bit closer. Try to get myself fairly accurate here. And then the same thing with the top. Pretty good. Something is off because this should look pretty much. It should like the angle here. See how this angle is should pretty much match up to this one. I can readjust it in a couple of minutes if it doesn't look like it's going to give me what I want. All right, now I'm going to go my reference distance along the z axis. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this right to the bottom of that door. All right, and what I'm going to do is the reference length. I'm going to put is it 80 inches? I think 80 or 86. I think it's 80. And 80 inches is the common. It's like a standard size, standard height for doorways. All right. So I know that this door is roughly 80 inches. So that sets the scale for my house. I don't have to rescale everything when it's all said and done. Maybe, but it'll have me darn close, like in the ballpark. All right. So once you have that set, perspective plotter, you can turn off plotting. We don't need to be plotting anymore. We can jump right into switching over to our cube and start doing some work on that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start myself in the face select, and I'm going to start pushing and pulling on the different faces, and I'm going to move those so they line up with the edges of the house, right? And you'll have to do this a few times. You're going to be moving these all over the place. All right, slide that down to the edge of the top. Or up in there. It's a little bit tricky because you know that there's an overhang on the roof. So it doesn't go exactly where you would think it needs to. All right. So what I was saying before is these two corners here should line up pretty well. So it may be that that front is still off a little bit. Something definitely looks off. And what I could do if I need to fix that is I can go back into perspective plotter and it may be one of these lines isn't quite right. Could be this one here. That is way off, but it looks better. Hmm. All right. What I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and move these around so it's the size of the house again, and we'll see how it stacks up if it looks right or not. I mean, it looks better. Yeah. See, something's not right because that's definitely right. We're going to have to move that back down to where it was. Sometimes if it doesn't go exactly the way you want, if it doesn't look like something's lining up quite right, could be that this bottom, maybe I need a longer run on the bottom here. Sometimes I experiment with different. See, it only looks like when I lift that up is when it looks right. Or if I'm being quiet here. All right, let's just stick with that for now. All right, I'm not going to fuss with it too much because I don't want to get it so far out of whack that it becomes unusable. Bring that down to good height. That can stay where it's at. So I'm just pushing and pulling these things to get them where I feel they need to be. So they line up with the sides of the houses like so. All right, I think right there is not too bad. Okay, I say that looks pretty good. All right, so the next step from here is we already got the basic shape of the house. All right, so dimensionally, this is obviously this is what the house is going to look like. So we got the basic shape down from here. My next step from here is I would give this a roof. That'd be the next step, and just a very basic roof. So why is my key binding not on? I can't remember how to turn that on. But I'm going to control R. I'm going to line up, hover over the side here, and I'm going to split the difference on this cube. Now, what I'm going to do is I am going to deselect this top line here, and then I'm going to right click and then D for dissolve the rest of the edges because I only need this very top edge up here. All right, so I'll highlight that, and then I'm going to G to move it, to grab it on the Z axis, and I'm going to move that up along until I come up to the till everything matches up with what I have there. Now you'll notice that the edge of the roof here doesn't line up with the edge of the roof there. That's because there's an overhang, right? So once we get our overhang, it'll look a lot better. It'll look like what it does in the image. All right, so that is the basic shape of our house. From here, we can go through and we can connect up those two sides if you want. And I'm pressing J to join, by the way, joining those two. 0 to get me back into image view. Great. So that is the basic of the house. From here, we want to start marking out garage doors, where the windows are going to be, where the porch is going to be, that sort of thing. Right. So this is all done either via the knife tool or control R doing can't think of, can't think of what I'm trying to, can't think of the term. Loop cut. Jeez, get it together, Bauer. All right. So from here, what I would normally do is I would control R in the front of the house and I would move this. Let's see, let's G. We'll move that along the Y axis. Just align one of these up with the garage door. Now, what you could do, let's see here. All right. I'm going to deselect the two front lines, rid of everything else. And I'm just going to move that one line in like so. All right to the edge of that door. Not control K. I want to hit K for the knife tool. Again, along the Y axis. And that's our garage door. Okay. The garage door set. It's exactly where it needs to be. Now you'll notice on a lot of these houses, you're going to have to fight your intuition because you want the door to be centered. You want the windows to be evenly centered. And so many of these houses, it's just not that way. Things are not centered like you want them to be. So go with the image the best that you can. Get things lined up where you think they should be, or at least where they look like, they are in the image. But if things are like really out of whack and it's really throwing off your model and it just doesn't look right, then by all means, put things where you think they should go, windows, doors, that sort of thing. All right. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to another loop cut in the front of the house, control R. What happened now is see how I'm only getting a partial cut. All right. So let me get out of there. The reason I'm only getting a partial cut is because of this here, right? Because I ran this along the top of the door, and this extra vertex right here is throwing off this square. So if I was to run one more cut, right, a vertical cut, so this one's not interrupted at all. It's just one perfect square that's not interrupted by another vertex. Now I should be able to do a full loop cut again. There we go. So the front of the house is fine. I can do a loop cut again. What you could do is you can kind of place it sort of where you want it, and you can scale it on the Y axis, get it close, and then just sort of try to line things up that way. Scale it on the y-axis, bring that in a little bit more. Holding shift to go slower, by the way. And that'll give you the width of the door. Now, doors obviously are a standard height and they're also a standard width. So if you wanted to, you could set this door to the width that you think that it needs to be, but your model also needs to be to scale, right? So if I go into object mode and I look under item, well, right now I'm still at 1, 1, and 1, so that should be okay. And the reason it is like that is because in perspective plotter, I use that vertical distance of that 80 inches on my door. That's the only reason I'm in scale right now. If I did not do that, this would be all over the place. This would not be a 1, 1, and 1. Depends how you did it. It might be, probably wouldn't be. All right, so I'm not going to put this line across the top of the door yet because I want to use the loop cuts on this window. So I'm going to leave that go for now. All right, and then I'm going to Control R. Nope, threw it off again already. Throwing it off this time. Should be able to control. Oh, so it does work. Hmm. Me being silly. There we go. Control R. Line up those windows. That's pretty good right there. Keep that where we want it. Actually, it's good. And we got 2 more windows that we can do over here. Control R and scale on the y-axis. So if you don't get it exactly where you want it, you can do what I did in the last one. Just grab one of the lines and move it if you need to. Now, the thing is, the way I would do this at one point is once I had one window done, I used to copy that over to the next window. This way, I was ensured that my windows weren't going to be 2 different widths, that I'd have one width, one a different width. But there's ways to fix that if you end up with that being the case. You can verify that they are the same width. And I'll show you how to do that. All right, so we'll scale these on the y-axis. That in place. And I'm going to scale it a little bit more. All right. So the way you want to do this, if you want to double check how this works, one, it takes an add-on, a Blender add-on, and you're going to make sure, you're going to need to make sure that that is actually installed, right? So if you go up to edit, go down to preferences, and then search. You want to search for measure it. For measure, just type in measure right here, and you can see that 3D view measure it came up. If the box is not selected, select it and get that active. All right. From there, we want to select this horizontal line right where that window plane is. And then you're going to use shift and select the one also right next to it, that second window. All right. We're going to go to this view tab here. And at the very bottom, you can see measure it tools. We're going to click segment and we're going to click show. Now, what you could do is I have a hard time seeing that blue. So I go down and I change it to something that's a little bit brighter that I can see it. All right. So one is 1.02 and the other one is 0.99. So that doesn't really work out too good for me. So what I can do is I can just grab this line here and we're going to slide that along its y-axis until it says 0.102. And then now we know that both of our windows are exactly the same width. They're not going to look funky when we start creating our windows. All right. From there, we don't need to keep any of those measurements, so you can get rid of those, hide it right away. Don't need any of that stuff anymore. All right. Now we can start putting some of our vertical lines here because we have so far nothing that needs to be added except for, I'm going to get rid of that extra line. Actually, you know what? I'm going to use that line. I'm going to slide that along the y-axis to where the edge of that port should be. Because there is another one. I have the porch to consider. I need right around here, it's a little hard when you start getting a whole lot of lines in here. It gets hard to tell which line is which. I do need, I'll tell you what, I can do all this with a knife tool. Let's start putting in tops of some of these windows. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up top of this window here. Now the tops of the windows, doors, everything should all be on the same height. So I'm going to do this along the y-axis like so. And that's going to be the top of this window, the door, and then both the other windows. And this will be true for the bottom of the window, maybe, not always, because sometimes you get different shaped windows. You know, some are a half window. Maybe this bay window here, which it looks like is going to be the case, actually sits lower than these other two windows. But we can do this one of two ways: is we can line this up and do this one more time along the y-axis. Okay, so you can see that it is shorter. So we can either run a second set of lines here for our windows, or we can just make them all the same height. Pick one of those two distances and make all your windows this height or the one right below it. This way you're not dealing with two different heights. It doesn't really matter. All right. So right here where we came across the door, I want to get rid of that line. We have just this area here that I can use for the door. Same with these windows here. I don't need bottom line. Just getting rid of some extra lines here that I don't need. This is going to be the layout. I want to get that porch laid in here somewhere. So let's figure out to go with the horizontal where I think the top of that porch should be. Again, I'm going to run that along the y-axis. So trying to get a feel for exactly where, maybe it will. Wherever I think that corner needs to be. So, right. And then what I could do is I can extend this up using a knife tool. So this area here, right in here, be my porch. Right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select that face and I'm going to pull it out until our corners meet up here. So yeah, it actually looks pretty good. It came out as far as it needed to, a bit higher than it needs to be, but I knew that was going to happen because these corners didn't match up 100%. So some things are going to be off a little bit. When it gets to be off a whole lot, that's when you start to have issues. But right now, I would say, yeah, we're in pretty decent shape. All right, so this looks pretty good. We don't need a lot of these excess lines. I try to clear a lot of these lines up as I go. One, because I can put more in as I need them, and two, the more you have, the more cluttered it gets. It just gets kind of hard to work with. Right, so that looks pretty good. Now the smaller details I usually come back for. Right, so when you start working on like railings and like the roof details, the door details, the window details, the very first thing I want to do is just get everything laid out. Now, some things are going to be left to your imagination. Like you can see that we have one window over here on the side. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to do that one the same way that we did these, where we could just line it up because I can almost guarantee it's not going to come out the way that you want it to. But what we could do is you could kind of mark the edge of one of your windows. So what does I do? What I do is I usually come around here, get myself a line. You can either make a loop cut and set that one, another loop cut over, and get yourself back into this mode, and we can start moving these along the x-axis, right? So I can bring this one up the edge of that window like so. All right. And what I want to do is I'm going to bring this one. Actually, let's see how close it comes out just as an experiment. Let's move this one along the x axis. So, and let's measure that window. 0.82. What should that have been? 1.02? Not too bad. Now, if you're a stickler for these things and you want to make sure they're exactly where they need to be, you can move both lines at once and kind of eyeball it. Honestly, I don't get anything that exact. If I feel like it needs to be that exact, I do it, but generally that's usually good enough. All right. And then from here, what you could do if you want to make sure your windows are at all the same height, is I could run a temporary line along the y axis, then again along the x, like so, and enter that. And what I do is I always delete the lines that I don't need. Now I don't need this whole entire line, but at least I have an established height for where I want the top of that window to be. And the same will hold true for the bottom of the window along the y axis like that, along the x. So, and oh, you know what? I deleted my window. Go back and there we go. Window back in. That was no bueno. Okay, now let's try that again. This time, not delete where my window is going to be. Okay, and again along the X. So, enter that in. Get rid of the lines we don't need. And I'm going to get rid of these side lines just because actually I'm going to keep this one here so I can measure off of that for the back of the house. But since there's only one window, I don't need any additional lines. So I'm going to get rid of that. Rid of my measurement. I don't really need that anymore. All right. Now, this is where we start to use our imagination. All right. Because from the photo, we can only see the one side window over here with the air conditioner. So we can either assume that the other side is identical, or we could do something different if we want. You could put two windows over there, but then you also have the back of the house, which we can't see. Now, the one thing you could do is go to Google Street View and see if maybe you can go into like an aerial view. Oh boy, where was I? You can always go into aerial view and see if it has a deck. Geez, I don't know which house I had now. Guess I shouldn't have been so quick to do that. Darn it. All right, but what I was saying is you can go into aerial view and take a peek at the back of the house to see if it has a deck. If it doesn't have a deck, then we really don't need to be building one. But you could basically do whatever you want. Throw a couple windows, door on there, or you can try to maybe like go around the block and from the other side, see if you can maybe see through to the backyard. Let me see what this oops picture said. Uh, cut off the actual. Trying to see if I can see the actual address in the file. Nope, can't. Darn it. Yeah, I guess I was a little quick to jump into Street View there. All right, no biggie. Like I said, that's basically all I wanted to get at. Like I said, if it was any one of these houses, you can just kind of zoom in and see if you can. If there's a deck, you'll be able to see it sticking out, right? So if it has one, you can take a shot at building it. If it doesn't have one, save yourself the trouble because they are not fun to build. um, with the front porch, what I'm going to show you with the front porch is pretty similar to the way the deck is done. So I'm going to skip building the entire deck because everything I'm going to do up here pretty much applies to how you would build a deck. All right, so the only one thing I want to do now, and I should have done this from the beginning, is I'm going to make one additional line where this foundation goes, right? And I can't do that with a loop cut. I should have done it from the beginning so I can make a loop cut around the entire house. But since I can't, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do this with the knife tool. Right, I'm going to, from here, actually, let me get rid of that. Let me go here along the y-axis, like so. And then again along the x. We're going to set that in place. Okay, and then what I can do is I can keep following that around the building if I need to. All right, so that is it for today, I think. Right, we're already knocking 40 minutes. So like I said, these things take a little bit of time. Next video, we'll quickly put in the other two windows or the other window for the other side of the house. And then decide what we're going to do for the back. If it's just going to be a back door, throw in a couple windows and call it a day, or build a deck or what have you. We'll build the roof out a little bit, put the finishing touches on the doors, windows, and I guess, I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out when the next video gets here. All right. But for now, I'm going to leave it right there. So remember, practice, practice, practice. Like and subscribe if you want. Up to you. All right. And that's it. With that being said, Bauer Brown. I'll see you on the next one.